Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We have attendees rolling on. We're going to give a second for folks to come online, but welcome to our College Board Leader to Leader series. Today, we're going to be talking about College Board's Big Futures program or Big Future program. As always, we're joined by College Board Director Brad Bruner, who will kind of lead this conversation. Excited to see a lot of familiar faces on the call. Our MASSP president, Ms. Jolyn Clark's on there. Welcome. As well as some former members, some other friends that we know from others. We have a lot of counselors I see coming on and joining. So this is great, a wonderful wide array of folks. If you know folks that are interested in this, remember, please encourage them to sign up for our webinar series. These are free as a part of our services. And we have a wide array of webinars coming up at the end. We'll kind of remind you of what the next ones are, and those will also come out in that follow-up email. But we are excited to be here with you on this Monday afternoon. I know that's a tough time, so we appreciate everybody being on, and we're excited to have Brad Bruner to walk us through this idea of navigating college and careers with big futures, something that is really important to my work as a former principal, but also in partnering with a lot of our groups around the state to try to help our Michigan students understand what their potential is and understand what those next steps in getting there are. And I think that's the important part, right? This is about unlocking potential, and it's about being able to see how the information that they already have might help them kickstart their way forward, and how some of these tools can be a real resource for them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad and let him take this one over. Brad, floor
Hey,
is yours.
thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. And just to confirm, you can see my screen okay? Very good. Thanks, Tom. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining me. As Tom said, my name is Brad Brunner. I'm a senior director with the College Board. I've been with the College Board now. This is starting my year number three. Um, Prior to my time at the College Board, I was in a position, probably like many of you are on the call. I was 10 years as a public high school teacher and just about 10 years as an administrator, school board member. All of that has been in the state of Michigan my entire life, my entire career. So happy to serve the people of the state of Michigan by leading the College Board's work in the state. Great pleasure of mine. And I've also had some experience abroad and seeing what the College Board offers and how it is perceived and approached internationally too, which has helped me think, I think, more creatively about how we approach our work in the state of Michigan. So I do always start with my contact information. My role at the College Board isn't just Big Future or SAT or PSAT or AP, but it includes AccuPlacer. If your school has a CLEP program, which many schools do, and adult education programs do as well. But my role in the College Board is any encounter that you have with a College Board program or service. I'm your primary point of contact in the state of Michigan for any of the needs, be it implementation, or if you have a customer care question, or if you've got, hey, we've got this data, well, how do we make meaning of this and do something beneficial with it? Those are the sorts of things that I step in on to help support you. And if it's not me that can do that, I can certainly point you in the right direction to the people at the College Board who can. So happy to serve you in any way possible. Please contact me. I've got my email address right up there for you. Now, as we go through our webinar today, please keep in mind that this is one of a series of webinars that is being hosted, which I'm so thankful for, by MASSP, that includes many of those different programs or services the College Board provides. So, for example, our next webinar is Career Kickstart. That's at the end of this month. That's on October 31st, and that's going to focus on the College Board's first foray into CTE. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is our first movement in that direction, starting with cybersecurity. And so we'll take some time to talk about what that looks like because it's in its pilot phase this year and next year and what that's going to mean for a full launch in a few years here. On November 14th, I'll give some time to the state of AP in Michigan, including the fastest growing classes, most popular classes, classes where we're seeing the most amount of success, and some updates on colleges that are now accepting our newer courses that we've just launched or about to launch for college credit. So all of that will come on November 14th. There'll be a lot of information where it's going to be, this is the first place you're going to hear it, is on that webinar. We did have a date change for our PSAT data webinar. I highlighted that explicitly for you, December 18th from 1 to 2 p.m. We'll focus on you've got your fall PSAT data. Now, how do we make meaning of that? That data webinar will show you how we approach that. And January 16th, building a master schedule with our AP Access courses, which focus on changing the invitation to AP, drawing in a different type of student into AP, and make sure that we're serving all students in so doing. And finally, on February 13th, you may have heard that 28 of our AP exams will now be fully digital and only digital. That's the only option. That's new. And we'll talk to you about how we prepare and implement the digital AP exams if you haven't done that before. So that'll be our last of our series in the webinar series. Again, thanks to MASSP for hosting all of these. So
And
our
Brad,
agenda for,
just for 1 second, I want to
yes,
thank
go
you
ahead,
for
Tom.
talking about that, but I want to make sure for those of you who did register for the one that had the date change, you should have already had a notification sent to you about that. And I want to make sure for those of you who are counselors on this call, as well as our administrators, because this is a both and, right? That January 16th building a master schedule, this is an important one, right? This is about how do we remove those gatekeepers that prevent our students from having the opportunity to get that college level experience in their high school days, right? When it's cheaper or free, right? They can take those courses. And we know the data around how much AP matters to success or predicts success post secondary, right? So whether I'm going into a career trade, career path, or whether I plan on going into a traditional liberal arts trade path, right? How do we make sure those kids are prepared for that next level of schooling and stop putting those barriers up? So I was really this was one I was particularly excited about as a high school kid who still remembers being told by a counselor, kids like you don't do well in classes like this, right? I went on to get a 5 on that AP test, by the way. So this matters, and that's a confidence builder. So we appreciate not only the state of the state piece, but also thinking about this in broader terms than just here's what you can have, but here's how you need to think about scheduling. So some really powerful stuff from my perspective. So thanks, Brad, for that leadership.
Yeah, Tom, we appreciate that. That does add relevance to the work that we're trying to do in making sure that, College Board isn't just for a certain type of student and how we serve students, but it is for all students. And Big Future, now that we drop into like this topic in general, this does this as well. The goal of the College Board isn't necessarily just to provide a pathway for a student to get into a four-year institution. The goal is to help a student with whatever comes next, be that a four-year institution, two-year institution, trade school, or employment, or into armed services. This is why Big Future was developed. Out of that access piece is to help students with whatever comes next. Life after high school is kind of how we coin that term. And so, with that said, that's where Big Future comes into play to help students think about really the following things that you see on our agenda is the multiple pathways to success. What we do know for a student is that there are various different ways that they go about achieving whatever it means to have a fulfilling life to them, whatever they consider to be successful, be it a job, be it employment right after school, be it career, be it military, whatever that might be. There are many, many different ways a student takes to get there. And so we want to talk to those students about that, be realistic about that, and help them figure out an efficient pathway to match their skills with their interests, which we believe Big Future does. So we'll use the two tools that we offer that we refer to as Big Future to explore careers, plan for college, pay for college, and think through how the Big Future tools do exactly that. And then if we have any time here at the end, career kickstart, but that'll come much more fully at our October 31st, webinar. So when we think about Big Future, where it comes into play, this is its relevance in a way, is really sort of at the end in the planning phase of a student's career in high school. So if you think about the instructional component, where does the College Board come into play? Well, certainly with AP courses and with pre-AP, and then soon to be in Career Kickstart. That's the instructional side that we offer. There's an assessment side, certainly the College Board has as well with AP exams and the whole SAT suite of assessment. So when a student has gone through that input and output sense, they've got a good idea and a great idea of their skills, of their knowledge. Hopefully, they're thinking about what comes next. And Big Future comes into play at that touch point. We meet students at that point when they're thinking about what is next. So the planning phase, Big Future and Big Future schools. So, with regard to Big Future, I mentioned there are two sort of tools that make up Big Future. One of them is accessed on a cell phone, which is where students go, to live in a way, and so that's relevant in the manner that that technology is, generally speaking, but not the truth in the individual sense, but generally speaking, accessible for the individual student. They actually don't even have to use their own phone to access the app. They can use a family member, caretaker, guardian, so on. And Big Future is accessible via any web browser, and that's bigfuture.org. And then we have two different ways of students getting recruited through those services: Connections, which is brand new as of 1 year ago today. And then we have Search, which has been there for quite some time, as a more broad method of students being connected to recruiting services for colleges and for nonprofit scholarships. So when we think about the two different tools that make up Big Future, it's important to understand how they complement one another and how they differentiate a bit as well. So there is the Big Future School, and that is the mobile app. You'll hear me refer to that as Big Future Schools. Big Future Schools, again, is only accessible via the cell phone. And a student signs up for Big Future Schools when they take an in school assessment, such as the spring SAT school day or any of the PSAT related assessments at that time. This is where the students put in their cell phone number or that of a parent or a guardian or a caretaker, and they are prompted to download the Big Future Schools app. That was the most downloaded app on the Apple iOS store October of last year, and it became the most popular way of students to get their PSAT and or SAT scores. So this is the way that students are receiving these scores. Not all students, but many of them are. And through Big Future Schools is where they can individually, in a real privacy forward method, connect with not for profit colleges and with scholarship organizations. And schools and districts can monitor what that looks like. And so that is the method now that we see as the future for students to be recruited by colleges and nonprofit colleges and scholarships is through what we call Connections. That is the service that lives within the Big Future School mobile app that connects kids to colleges and scholarships. BigFuture.org is what a student access on a web browser. It's more broad planning tools that are seen there. And students would access our search service through bigfuture.org, which allows them to be recruited more broadly by colleges and scholarship organizations. Students that do use bigfuture.org, they are immediately entered into drawings to win scholarships simply by doing one of 6 things, which are simple. And I'll show you how they do that on the web browser version once we drop into the sandbox tool. So for the moment, we're going to take a look at the mobile app. This is called, again, Big Future School. This is what students are prompted to download when they take their assessment. So Big Future School, as I mentioned, it meets students when they are focused on what's next, is when they get those in-school assessment scores back, and where, ideally, they are comfortable consuming information oftentimes, but not in every sense, on a mobile phone. So this gives millions of students control over their planning. In Big Future Schools, as soon as they get their scores, a student accesses customized college and career messages. This is a really cool piece of the app, is that the school organizations, the colleges and the scholarship organizations can see the assessment scores of the students, can see the demographics of the students, but cannot see, and this is the privacy forward piece of it, they cannot see any personally identifiable information of the child in the Big Future School Connections system. But the student can see messages from these institutions and from the scholarships. And if the student is interested in the institution themselves, they can opt to individually connect with each college or scholarship. That's the privacy forward piece. It puts the ability to control personally identifiable information in the hands of the child. There is nothing else that is like that on the market now, and we do believe that that is the future with regard to where we think student privacy laws may be going, is in that direction. So that was why we developed that, and that's how we see students using it. And schools, again, can monitor some components there of that. So as of now, we've had 3 million students plus who have accessed Big Future schools. 2 million of those students have opted to opt in to connection. They don't have to. And schools can actually block the ability of a student to even have the choice to opt into connections. They do have that opportunity to do that as well. Again, these students access connections via taking an in-school assessment, either the SAT or PSAT. So at this point, schools do and districts do have the control over whether the student will see the following screen. This following screen here shows exactly what a student would see during the digital readiness check, which is that period prior to taking one of the SAT assessments. They would have the opportunity to drop their phone number in, and then at that point, opt into connections if they wish to opt into connections. So that's when the prompt takes place. And when that prompt is completed, the students will receive a message that looks like this SMS to download the app and view scores. They can preview the features and download the app as they're thinking about downloading the app. The application gets installed. This is what it looks like, the icon. And if a student enables push notifications, again, that's optional. They'll receive notifications about their scores or messages as soon as they are available. And again, this is the number one method of students in these in-school assessments receiving their scores. They'd like to see that right away. They get a push notification as soon as that's ready for them to view it. So the score report, it looks a lot like a student would see in their College Board account, is as follows. They receive their overall total score for both sections. They can break that down into the individual skills and knowledge that come out of each section. Within that, they start receiving career insights. These career insights are really neat. What it shows is the fastest growing careers in the state and how those careers connect with a student's current skill and knowledge that they just demonstrated on the assessment that they just took. So it takes their skill and knowledge, pairs it with the fastest growing careers, and that's what a student sees. Now, keep in mind, this is not a recommendation for the students because it doesn't include the students' interests. Like, that is not a part of what the Career Insights snapshot. The goal is just insight into what might make sense for that child to get the child thinking about colleges, careers, or what life looks like after high school. Whatever that was going to be, let's get the student thinking about that in an educated fashion. And so that's what the hope is with the Big Future School app, is that that thinking is starting to occur. And then that student talks with their counselor, utilizes whatever tool the school uses. Maybe it is Big Future to start the planning for what that might look like, and become more educated about the options that are available. So the Connections app also, too, as I'd mentioned, students will hear from universities and from scholarship organizations. This is what it looks like to the student. They'll see the institutions that are demonstrating interest in them. And keep in mind, these institutions do not know who the child is. They've just seen some of the characteristics about the child and the assessment scores about the child and some of the other questions they answered in the digital readiness check. And then the student will start receiving messages from those institutions. The student can save those messages and discard those that they don't wish to have as part of this. And then if the student wants to connect, it's very simple. There's an explore option for them. They request information from the institution, and at that point, they've made their connection. The institution knows who the student is. The conversation goes wherever the student decides to take that conversation from there. So when we think about connections, again, the goal is privacy forward, personal identifiable information in the hands of the child. They decide when to share it, and they share it in one-to-one opportunities only. Student search is what is available on the web browser version, of Big Future. Student search, the way that it works is the student, again, has the opportunity to share their information. They share their information, including personally identifiable information. And colleges and scholarship organizations can see that about the student and can recruit that student through the search service, again, which is available in Big Future. So students respond to colleges that they are interested in. They'll see all those that are interested in them. So it's not as much of a one-to-one connection as connections might be. It's more of a broad search process where the student's information is available to a broader audience of colleges and scholarship organizations. So again, both services, they are complementary, certainly, of one another. A student can use both and or one or none of all those. They have the opportunity to opt in or opt out at any time if they don't wish any of that information to be shared. So again, privacy forward, keeping the control of information about the student in the hands of the student and giving them some choice.
Hey,
So educators, yes, Tom, go ahead.
okay. And just a reminder that I'm sure everybody on the call is aware that a few years ago, some laws passed in the state of Michigan requiring that parents have to opt to allow this to be shared, right? Because it is personally identifiable information. So Brad's spoken a lot about the idea that the student has control of their personally identifiable information, but they don't and they can't, right? Because it belongs to their parents until they're graduated and they're considered out of school and that parental control. So hopefully you're also all aware of the process to make sure that the parents have opted out of that if they want to be opted out. And we did some really good work in collaboration with our friends at the College Board and the folks at MDE, which was awesome, to ensure that the language now reflects the law that parents could opt out. For a long time it was opt in. So I just want to put kind of that flag up to make sure that before we're going in there and telling students to sign up for this, that first we have that documentation or we've gone through the process to ensure parents had the ability to opt out of this if they don't want their kids to do it. Because failure to do that can put you into a pickle that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, very good point, Tom, and thanks for that. And keep in mind this part too is that students they don't see Big Future, the web browser-based version of this, unless the student chooses to go there. Unless, it's not something that they actually do see unless they make the choice to go there. Connections. This is the where the student has the opportunity to opt out because, as Tom was mentioning, they're prompted as a result of a school-based service taking the SAT or PSAT. They see that. And so that's when that opt out letter does come importantly into play. And I should mention too that the Big Future School app, like almost all apps that require an account, the student must be 13 or older. So if your child is taking the PSAT 8, 9, they will not be prompted to download Big Future Schools because most of those students are under the age of 13. So, in thinking about the educator side and what an educator gets to see about student use of this, you could see why this would be beneficial if you're if you're a school counselor and you'd like to know which institutions are interacting with the majority of your students. That would be good to know. If you're thinking about having a college counselor come in and do maybe a college visit, or if you're thinking about getting a bus to take your students to a specific school, you can see the level of interaction so you could make choices like that. And so in the K-12 school reporting portal now, and this is available just as of this summer, so it's very early on, and I've heard lots of improvements actually coming down the pipeline here for this. But you can start to access an engagement report and student outreach report that shows the following things. You can see the number of students that took an assessment and that would allow them to download Big Future Schools. You can see the number of students, percentage wise, excuse me, that are actually using that Big Future Schools app. You can see that for each individual assessment, percentage of testers using it, and then the actual engagement with it, those that have accessed the Big Future School app and have viewed some level of college and career planning content. You can also see the colleges or universities or scholarship organizations that are communicating or contacting your students. So in this particular example here, we clipped this one early on. You can see that these students have been reached out to in their school by the following universities. There's that quick screenshot, many more listed below it. But you can see the number of students that are contacted. So you can see the students who have opted into connections, students who are reading their messages from these institutions, and the list of organizations that reached out to your students. You can also see that for the individual student as well. You can see that here. And so a student's name would be off to the left-hand side. We certainly have clipped that out. And you can see, are they using the Big Future app? Have they accessed it? Have they viewed the reports? Are they eligible for Big Future School and opted into connections and so on? So you have the ability now, at minimum, to kind of monitor at the school level, and for the folks that are on the call from the district level, you can also see this at the district level. You can see the percentage of testers, those who have viewed their scores, those that have opted in connections, and to what degree they're using it in a very similar fashion. So it's seen at the school level and at the district level. And at the district level, again, you can see where organizations are sending messages to your students through connections, very similar to how a school sees it as well. So, in the end, for Big Future Schools, again, the mobile app version, the steps pretty simple. One, a student provides that mobile app during the mobile number during setup. They opt into connections if it's available, and they can check their score. They can access all that planning and career and college information, including the insights. And the students then have that broad opportunity to use that tool, and they can use that tool alone to make some good choices again for what is coming up next for them in life after high school. Now, I want to step out of the slide deck and slide into Big Future, the web based version. We'll refer to this just as Big Future. As I mentioned earlier, Big Future itself, the web-based version, it's more expansive, far more expansive in many different ways. And I want to show you what the student experience looks like in Big Future. So I'm going to drop into this account. I'm going to make sure that I'm still logged in. So give me 1 second here just to make sure that that is the case. Looks like it is. Okay, very good. Okay, so if you were to go to bigfuture.org, and if at any point in time you're using this site and you want to get back to just this landing page here, if you click on Big Future, it'll take you right to it. And so when you are here, just learning about the website, there are a couple different buckets of opportunity for students as they look to do three main things in this particular site. That is explore careers, plan for college, and pay for college. There are numerous different ways of approaching this through the lens of some of our populations of students who are historically underserved. So I want to point that out to begin with, because this is, again, going back to what Tom and I mentioned at the beginning of the call. There is access and opportunity components embedded within this. This is a strong and growing social mission of the College Board, is to provide services for all students. And so with that said, if you are a student who identifies as LGBTQ plus, we do have specific recruitment services for those students, Real Talk for Black students, information for Native Indigenous students. We have recognition programs for first generation students either going to college, and there's a whole slew of scholarships that are in here based upon similar demographics that I'll show you as we move through this. But I want to make sure and highlight these items because these items are going to grow. This is one of the ways that the College Board is looking to expand. Big Future is to make it more experiential and it tailored to the individual student. So we'll come back to some of these items here in just a moment. But I wanted to start over where it says My Big Future. And so if you click on My Big Future, you have a couple different things to point out. Each individual student has their own dashboard. And that dashboard shows where the student has made progress in exploring careers, planning for college, and paying for college. Again, the three items that we look at most cleanly in Big Future. So it shows the student what they should be doing right now, what they should be doing later, and what they have already accomplished. So very simple dashboard. If they go to their checklist, and I'm a fictitious student here that's a 12th grader, I haven't done really anything yet as a 12th grader. So I have a lot of things to think about during my senior year to get myself ready for what comes next. Ideally, a student at this point in the year would have completed some of these things either over the summer, maybe at the start of the school year. So that's where they see some of the sense of like what they have left to do and what they have already done. And we're going to shift now over into, again, the three buckets of items that Big Future helps the student do. We're going to start with exploring careers. So if you are exploring careers, planning for college, paying for college, in a sense, you're doing something similar with each of these topics. You are taking all the careers that we have and narrowing them down into something that makes sense for the student. Same thing for college. Thousands of colleges are here on our site, narrowing down what makes sense for the child. Same thing about paying for college is what options exist for that child and how do we narrow them down so the student can rationalize what is going to provide the support that they need for them for their next steps in life after high school. So to see how this works, let's go into explore careers. If you go to explore home, it'll show you all the different options that you have to explore careers in the home page here. I am going to access what I would like to show you just from this drop down menu. So, where it says career search, this would be a great place for us to start. So, the student would click on career search. Um, Places to start might be for them just to look at the different careers that exist so they know the layout of the system. Now, I have already kind of toyed around in this. So I've narrowed my search down to 923 careers. There are thousands that exist. And when a student sees a career, they see just a tiny little snapshot to begin with. And we can look at accountants and we can look at auditors. So if you click on accountants and auditors, just for example's sake, you can see the median yearly income, the degree level that's typically required for that position, and projected job growth. Within that, if you click on income and hiring, the student can see on the low end how much a student or a person might make in that position, and then the high end. If a student is looking to stay in the state of Michigan, or maybe let's say go out to California, let's give that a look. And then that data changes drastically. So it can be changed just geographically, region by region. So if a student's going to stay in Michigan, they leave it as is, or if they want to go out to a certain state, they can plug that in and see what that looks like. Education level required for an accountant and or an auditor. The typical person in that position has a degree in these distributed areas here. So the student knows exactly maybe how long they would need to go to college and what they should look to attain. And then the tasks and the knowledge and the skills that are associated with that role, giving the student again a sense of what is required to be able to do, in particular for a position like an accountant and auditor. You would assume there would be a strong foundation in math. One of the components of BigFuture is that a student can access their SAT and PSAT scores in just the web based version of that. They're accessible there too. I don't have any of those scores, and so I'm going to enter mine in, and I'm just going to make them up. So let's say that in math, I scored I'm going to get this out of 800, so let's go with a 640 in math. And let's say reading and writing, maybe as an area of growth for me, and let's say that let's go with a 480, and let's see what comes out of that. I'm going to choose my grade. I'm a senior. Okay, and let's see. So what this tells me, just based on that assessment, is do I have those basic foundational math skills to be able to do that position at this time? And since time it says in line and continue exploring. Okay, so I'm on track for that career path. And maybe in reading and writing, okay, for an auditor and accountant, those skills do strongly align. So there is a connection at minimum with the PSAT and SAT there. So if I go back to the career search, if at this point, if I like that position, I could add that to my list. And again, this is our goal, is to create lists out of this that are specific to the interest and the skills of the child. And so I can add that to my list, and there we have it. Some other things to consider for the student, and this is where a counselor can really come alongside the student and help. They can look at what income a student really thinks that they might need to attain in order to live the life that they want to live. If you're working with an eighth or a ninth grader, they may have no idea what that means. And if they do, it may be unrealistic. So, as we work and partner with schools, like this is one of those questions that at some point we want to get a rational answer to, is how much money does a student need to make in order to match the lifestyle they want to live? Excellent conversations to have with students. Thinking about what type of college degree, if that's it, or a certificate, or some college they're looking to attain, that will help them narrow down the list of jobs. Thinking about the career cluster that might make sense for them too, that would be helpful. And then the interest areas of the student. Now, we use that RIASEC data that most counselors are familiar with in thinking about the interest area of the student. So, on that note, one of the items that does come along with the search for exploring careers is the career quiz. The career quiz, this is where student interest and skills come into play. It is powered by ONET, by the U.S. Department of Labor, Employment, and Training Administration. And so for a student, they would take this quiz. It takes maybe 30, 40 minutes, kind of somewhere in that range. And it's just answering a series of questions using a very simple Likert scale, like do you like to build kitchen cabinets, lay brick or tile, develop a new medicine, study ways to reduce water pollution, write books or plays, play a musical instrument, teach an individual an exercise routine. So, again, teasing out interests and skills, but specifically as they align to careers that currently exist. So, the student would take this, and this would also help narrow down the careers that exist here for the student, again, think more rationally about, in particular as they get older. One item that might be a great place to start, especially if you're looking at working with younger students, is the newest addition to this, and it's called Multiple Pathways to Success. This is great foundational resource for a school counselor. But if a student has no idea, like what are even the most basic of options that come after high school, this can help with that. So, students, what we have found, the research that we have, is that they don't know what a 2 year college would offer in comparison to a 4 year college in that ninth, 10th grade year. So, helping them understand where these institutions would be a benefit to them or what an apprenticeship is. We find a serious lack of knowledge as to what that means. But helping the students understand, okay, this is what it means. This is the option. It's sort of like pre teaching vocabulary. I know what apprenticeship means. Now I can rationalize if that is right for me using some of the resources they see here. Jobs or skills training, leading maybe directly to a career, or a very specific training at an institution like Hobart for welding or something along those lines that provides a student what they need specifically related to an employment path. Or what about the military? Or what about just general employment, the basic skills I need to find work after I graduate from high school? So again, what we're focusing on here is that it is a nonlinear path in general for students. So there's more than one route to a destination. So our school counselors, this multiple pathways hub, we do believe provides a sense of it to a minimum to students. What are your options? Now that we know what those options are, let's start thinking about making some choices or giving the information you need to do that. So that exploring careers function, I'm only going to go through those top items there. That should help in narrowing down careers for students to think about. Now, as I think about those careers, interlaced within that is, well, what do I need to get to that point where I can enter into that career? And that might be the planning for college piece. So, in planning for college, again, trying to do the same thing. You have thousands of institutions that are here with us on the site. How do we narrow them down so we can make some choices among all the options that exist? So, with that said, it's very similar to exploring careers. They can start with that college search function. The college search functions, the query is more expansive here. There are many specific things that a student can, if they are able to look at. So to begin with, how this portion of the site is formatted, the student will see all the different colleges that exist. I've toyed around with this, but I see 4,355 colleges that are here. The student, when they see a college, and let's go with California State University, Los Angeles. So when they click on the profile of that school, I'll see a basic overview of the school. It's a 4 year school, average tuition, after aid, graduation rate, campus life, SAT range. They can see admissions criteria in here as well. So the typical GPA range of a student, SAT, ACT composite, acceptance rate, application requirements, and so on. Lots of good information. The academic components of the school, we do publish if they have an AP credit policy. So if you've taken an AP class, what that means for you if you've been successful on that at the institution. Study options that they offer. Again, we try to put as much here as we possibly can for the student to make a good choice. Like, is this right for me or not? The student should be able to answer that after looking at some of this. The cost to attend, the average tuition net price, adjusted by household income, in state, out of state, other costs that might be associated with it, such as housing, books, so on. And then a little bit about campus life. This is in a city. This is average per year for campus housing, number of students, that's not sports that are offered, but what division they are in the NCAA. Housing options. Now here are the sports that are offered. Do they offer scholarships? other activities like ROTC, government, drama, theater, campus ministries, a little bit more about the student body, including the demographic breakdowns of the student body as well. So that is the landing page for each college. And then if you have a sense of like, this is something I'd like to save and add it to my list, they can do so right away if they demonstrate that interest. And other things for them to look at. And these are these questions get more sophisticated as the student gets closer and closer to this point. But it's never too early to start looking at, again, what a student may want to study. I mean, your eighth or ninth grader may not have any idea yet, but now's the time to start doing some of the thinking. So they have different majors that are available for a student to choose among. That will help them narrow down their college search. They can look at where they would like to go. So states and territories, distance from a zip code. So if they really want to um, leave wherever their home base is right now and go someplace far away, they can choose how far away that might be. Again, things to think about. Many students have not that thought process has not started yet. So this starts the habit of mind of thinking about what's next and maybe in that case how far away they want to go or how close they want to stay. You have the college level that they might be interested in, the college type, any special missions. So maybe an HBCU, all women, all men, distance learning, double majors, honor programs, weekend colleges. If they're looking for a specific religious affiliation, they can include that as part of their query as well. And you don't have to answer all these. The student doesn't have to be prepared to do that. Affordability, do they have financial aid? The application fees like, if this is an international student or if your student is thinking about going international, what opportunities for aid exist for international students? And for our campus life, the student needs to think about what size school they want to go to. They want to be in a city, suburbs, rural area. What sports do they want to have that exist there? Campus services. If you have a student with a disability, what support services exist there too? What types of credit do they offer? Placement for AP, CLEP, or transfer credits? Admissions criteria, thinking about what your student's SAT score is if they took it. And again, this is open to the general public. I should have mentioned this earlier on. There's zero cost at any time to a student or a family to use this. It is free. What a student's GPA is, the acceptance rate of the institution. They have open admissions when applications are due. Do they accept a GED? And then what this will do for the student is provide three categories of colleges: reach, match, or safety. Reach, match, or safety, that gives some sense of what this means here. But the reach, match, or safety, I put in like a fictitious SAT score. I put in 1100. And what this will do is show schools that I will likely be able to be admitted into if I meet all the deadlines and criteria. That's a safety school, the school that I'll get into likely without too much of an issue. Match means my qualifications are right on par with what they would accept on average. And then reach, I don't know if I had any of those schools in here that are a reach. Reach would be, I don't quite meet the qualifications, but I'd really like to see if I could go there. That school may offer something and I really want it, but I'm not quite qualified for it. Maybe I can get in. That would be a reach. So it categorizes the schools in that way. And then also the final question is what types of degrees are offered by that school. Again, the goal, all of these query questions is to get down to a school and schools that are a great match for that student. You could also take a college quiz, much like the career quiz. It asks a lot of the questions that go into those items that we just mentioned a minute ago. Your grade point average, what do you want to study? What are you considering type of school and so on? It'll take the students in a little bit more fluid fashion through these items that you see here in planning for college. So in Pay for College is where we can see the variety of scholarships that are offered. And in the Pay for Colleges component, I'll go to the homepage. You can do two things. You can search all scholarships or you can match with scholarships. And if we go into the search all scholarships here piece to begin with, this is where you can look at, again, these query items such as location, academic stage, GPA, scholarship type, degree level, field of study. Input all that information, and there are 26,855 scholarships that are um, on this site uh, with some level of scholarship waiting for a student to be able to receive so they can support that student. So those are some of the items that you can look at in order to narrow down that field. But I wanted to show you within scholarship um, types is match with scholarships. Match with scholarships gives you a good idea of, in general, what exists for the student, and in particular, some of the characteristics of that individual student. So if you go to show me the scholarships, I have a number of them that popped up here for me that I just put in some basic information about my students. But if you put in like affiliations, for example's sake, if you have, let's see here, if you are a African American student and you're looking at specific scholarships available for African American students, you can see a few that are named in general here. If you are typing in, let's say you are a first generation immigrant, that's actually on a different page. Let's see. Mm, Ah, the wrong line. If you have any family that's a veteran, there are a number of different scholarships available to individuals who are family members of veterans. If you are, for example, adopted, there are scholarships there. If you're a caregiver, there are scholarships there. Child of widowed parent, child of single parent, dependent child. The idea is to understand is that there are scholarships available for just about any situation. And what we find and when we research this component of students is that they're not aware of all that exists there to them. And when they are, they have a hard time narrowing that down. So we would suggest then when you work with students on paying for college, in that home piece, look at all the scholarships that do exist, match students with the individual scholarships. There's even a scholarship that's in there, and I was in the wrong query, but even if you like books written by J.R. Tolkien, there is a scholarship for individuals titled Hobbit. And so that's individuals who appreciate that type of literature. There's a scholarship for that. There's a scholarship for just about everything, is what I'm getting to here when it comes to paying for college. One of the components that I didn't mention that I want to drop in here is that just by using BigFuture and doing one of these 6 things that we'll see here, either starting your college list, which I showed you, starting your career list, same thing, we showed you that, and the scholarship list, or if you apply to a college, or if you complete the FAFSA, which you can do here as well, or if you strengthen your college list by going back to it and doing more with it, any of these things, you're automatically entered into a BigFuture scholarship drawing. And we offer up hundreds of $500 scholarships a month, and we offer two $40,000 scholarships a month as well. This gentleman here, he's from John Glenn High School in Michigan. He won the $40,000 scholarship. I believe it was back in April of this spring. And then we had another student in Michigan win the $40,000 scholarship this summer in July from Warren. And so those students had no idea that even they had applied because they hadn't, because you don't need to. All you have to do is use or do one of these, only one or more of these 6 tasks here. And if you are a low income student, you actually get double the amount of entries into the drawing for those scholarships. Again, you don't have to apply. You don't have to say you're looking for this scholarship. It just happens. You've got your College Board account. You've signed into BigFuture. You've done one of these things. You're eligible for the scholarship. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have scholarships available and part of our national recognition programs for first generation students. And so, for a student who meets these characteristics here for our national recognition programs or newer, they have to take one of those qualifying assessments, score in the top 10%, earn a 3 plus on 2 or more distinct AP exams in the ninth to 10th grade, earn a cumulative GPA of a B plus or higher, and identify as a first generation Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Indigenous or Native, and or attend school in a rural area or small town. We recognize those students with our national recognition program scholarships that are available. So if you have students who fit into that category, encourage them to look here for that as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have programs that are specific to our underserved populations of students. We have Real Talk for Black students. And this is intended to be experiential. And actually, we have an event coming up tomorrow, from high school to healthcare. Black students in medicine, register now for our free October 15th virtual event. We have virtual events going all throughout the year on how to connect students with counselors at HBCUs, students that are going to HBCUs. They can talk about the experience and so on. So the goal is to make the recruitment very specific and open to the individual characteristics of the child. Mentioned we do have resources for LGBTQ plus students too. So this page, very specific, the College in Search and Individual Action Plan, 10 things every LGBTQ plus friendly college needs, factors to consider when choosing a university, and so on. We have similar information for Native and Indigenous students, and for counselors to be able to counsel all types of students, and for teachers, educators, and so on. We encourage you to explore some of the material that we see here. So my last comment then will be for our counselors, and that for educator portion, if you click on that, you can see resources. All these resources that you see are for counselors, but we do have some very specific in a toolkit for counselors. And so if you access that toolkit, all this information, again, is free to you, but help students navigate the college search website. There's a worksheet to go along with it for your planning, lesson plan for building a college list, counselor guide to Big Future and Big Future School, flyers for parents and for students, PowerPoints that help you guide your students and your parents through some of these different topics, videos to go along that as well. So, counselors on the call, we encourage you to visit the counselor resources that you see there. So, with that said, that is Big Future. As a student is doing it, they can monitor their activity up in their profile. In their dashboard, they can see what they have done, what is left to be done, and what's in progress. They can look at their checklist of things to think about as they're planning the next steps in their life. At any point in time, if they want to connect in with search, they have the opportunity to do that in My Big Future as well. That tool they can use for the recruitment process just the same, or if they've opted in, they want to opt out, they can do that there as well. So that is Big Future. In a nutshell, that's Big Future Schools, our mobile app, and that is Big Future, our web-based browser version of that as well. I did include, if you are a counselor on the call, I did include some slides about the web browser-based version that I'll share with you. So if you want to take those back and use those for any purposes, absolutely feel free. But I thought it'd be more useful for us to see what it looks like from the student side of things. So, with that said, Tom, that is all the information that I would like to share today about Big Future. For everybody on the call, thank you for joining. If you have any questions about Big Future, please let me know. I can say this, is the College Board is investing heavily in Big Future. And there's a lot left to come out that I do believe is going to make it an even better tool, more primed to support students in whatever comes life, for them in life after high school. So very excited for that. So stay tuned on an annual basis as we provide updates on Big Future. But hopefully, at this point, you've seen the utility of it. And if you have questions about how to use it, best practices, please contact me. You can see my email up there at any point in time. So thank you for joining me, Tom. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Are there any questions? I was obviously monitoring the chat and monitoring the Q&A and didn't see anything come up. Are there any questions for Brad that we can answer that anybody has to put in the chat? I think certainly there were hopefully a number of takeaways for you. Mine was actually right at the end, not realizing I knew all the student resources. I was not nearly as aware of all of the resources for counselors and educators that are embedded in the Big Future site. So as always, right? If you take something away, it's been a good learning experience, and hopefully, like me, you took 4 or 5 somethings away. But any questions before we end the webinar and let you all get back to what I'm sure is a fantastic Monday in your buildings, as all Mondays are. But any questions from anybody to Brad? All right. Well, seeing none, I want to thank you again for joining us on the Leader to Leader series. As always, you'll receive a follow-up email from me with the slide deck that Brad provides. as well as information on getting your sketches if you attended. All of these videos at some point later on in the fall will be posted up to our website and also accessible to anybody who goes to that resource page. But if you have any questions, please reach out to me or Brad. We'll make sure it gets to the appropriate person. And we thank you for your time today. And Brad, thank you so much for all the information and for your partnership with our principals, counselors, and everybody who does this great work at the high school level. So we appreciate you.
Great. Thank you for your time, everyone. Take care. Have a great rest of your week.
Take care, everybody.